of Texas.
The eyes of Texas have been trained this week on a place that's generating what may become the Corpus Christi sound. We've been to Jones County to visit with one of the old-timers. We've been to Weimar to see a collector of barbed wire and a lot of other old things. We've been to Nacogdoches to visit a cabinet maker, and we've been to Georgetown to see a candle factory. Something new is going on in Corpus Christi in an old building that used to be a laundry. The business there before was called the Oriental Laundry, but there is not anything Oriental about what's happening there now.
Okay, stand by, please. You're rolling. Here we go.
The remodeling of the old laundry started in June of 1978. The building is now a recording studio. The Hacienda Recording Company says its main business is to develop Mexican musical talent in South Texas and give Mexican musicians the kind of professional equipment and guidance other musicians enjoy in places like Los Angeles and Nashville.
Lauren?
It was Jim West's idea. West got his start in the music business as a teenager working for a country music radio station. He also spent 7 years with another Spanish recording company before he hooked up with real estate investor Roland Garcia to establish the Hacienda studio in June of 1979. West and Garcia already are talking about expanding.
We have here in Hacienda a very large building that has 24,000 square feet. Eventually, we hope to have 2 other recording studios, our own record processing plant, and our own marketing distribution center.
We want to grow into the things that we need to grow into and need to have for the artist. We want to get into mastering, into, as Roland mentioned, record production, and that's like pressing records, tape duplication. The growth thing could be tremendous, and a tremendous asset for Corpus Christi in Texas. You know, the centers have been in LA, New York, and different parts of the country, but you're seeing right now, I think Corpus Christi is going to be one of the biggest major centers in the Mexican-American record industry.
Our goal is to upgrade the product of the Mexican-American artist. At the same time, we are investing a tremendous amount of monies in promoting the Mexican-American artist. What our real purpose and intent is to do the same thing with the Mexican-American artist that the major labels are doing with the Anglo artist.
Everybody into their booths. Places, please.
Mic check, check,
Let's try that.
1, 2, 3, test. 1, 2, test.
Let's go through the song.
We're going to record it all?
Yeah, let's try and cut it. You can't hear me.
Hear.
Sorry about that. Let's give it a try. Let's see if we can get it on the first take.
1, 2.
West and Garcia say they think Hacienda has a big future. They already have several groups under contract. The studio is busy most of the time. The equipment they've installed can handle almost any recording situation.
We've got a Harrison console, MCI 24-track machine, MCI 2-track, Revox 2-track, Westlake monitors. We can do just about anything here in the studio.
The techniques for recording musical groups have changed a great deal from the early days when a group or a whole band would show up at a studio and play together.
I've recorded some people that used to record that way, say back in the 40s and early 50s, where they would just put them all in one room, put one mic in the center, and ask everybody just to play. But now, often the whole band is not even there. We concentrate on each individual instrument. We have 4 isolation booths where we put a guitar in one booth, an accordion in the other booth. The drummer has his own booth, and often the singers have their own booth, so that they we can concentrate on getting the best sound on each instrument. They have headphones on so they can hear what the other people are doing, and that's about the way we record now.
Popular music is often associated with a city or a particular part of the country. There's something called the Nashville sound, and there's the Detroit sound, and there's the Austin sound. The people at Hacienda hope their Latin music someday will be known as the Corpus Christi sound.
When you first come into the part where you sing, don't come in quite so loud because it kind of
Okay, now I also sounded flat in the first part.
Okay, yeah.
Shall we try it again?
Let's go from the top, yeah. Okay, here we go. Let's try it one more time.
Anson Jones was the last president of the Republic of Texas. He had also been a doctor in Brazoria, and he had a plantation near Washington on the Brazos. Jones never set foot in West Texas, but there's a county in West Texas named for him, and the county seat is too.
Anson was originally known as Jones City, but Texas already had a Jones City, so the name was changed to Anson. The county was organized in 1881. The town was founded the same year. Robert Moran Hestand was born in 1890. Mr. Hestand is better known as Doc. The Hestand family came to Jones County in 1897. And except for a few years when he lived in Midland and La Mesa, Doc's been here ever since.
It is pretty rough here in the early days. It's pretty hard to stay here. It's hard to make a living. That's back when everything was cheap and the land wasn't in cultivation, a whole lot of it. And it is a pretty hard place to live. I lived in a dugout when I first come here a long time, before we built a house down on the old home place. But my grandparents come here about 10 years before we did. And I've farmed all my life, fed cattle part of the time, raised wheat 31 years. I quit cotton in 45. Boll weevil was eating me up. I quit raising it, but they've got by with them the last 4 or 5 years. For some reason, they haven't hurt much. They made the biggest crop this time I've ever seen in Jones County, cotton crop. It's a cotton country. Of course, there's some oil, rice smart oil around, and they're digging some more around now. I don't know, they've got a little well or two here lately and dug 3 or 4 dry holes, but they still drilling. That's the whole thing. That's what the whole thing based on, this town here. Little oil and a whole lot of farming.
Doc was 20 years old when the county's 4th courthouse was built.
And built that in 1910. And the fella lives here yet that tore the old one down. He's about a year older than I am.
Anson was just a few years old when disaster struck, and most of the town was wiped out.
It caught a fire and burned up once after I come here, most of it. It was just little lumber buildings all around the square at that time, most of it. And after that fire, the most of these buildings up there now is built about 1907 and 8. And on up from then on for a few years. Now there's a lot of fine homes all back up south of me here, all the way from $100,000 down that's been built in the last few years.
Doc Hestand remembers most of the good times and most of the hard times that Anson and Jones County have ever had. He is philosophical about the land and the area he's called home for almost 90 years.
It's all I know, and I've been nowhere else much. Part of it I like and part of it I don't like, but it's that way everywhere you go, you can't get all the coons up one tree. I don't like the sandstorms and I don't like the dry spells, but when it rains, it's pretty good country.
The name J. Armstrong is not recorded in any Texas history books we know about, but a lot of Texas farmers and ranchers know the name. Many people say J. Armstrong invented the post hole digger, and they say he invented it in Weimar in the 1880s. If he did, he didn't get a patent on it. But that doesn't matter to the people of Weimar. They're proud of J. Armstrong, and they're also proud that their Wiley True has assembled one of the country's biggest collections of old-time tools.
Wiley has one of the finest collections of barbed wire in the state. He has so many railroad spikes and date nails that he uses them to make ornaments and lamps, coat racks, and other things around the house. There are a lot of barbed wire collectors around, but not many tool collectors. For Wiley True, one hobby led to the other.
I'd been collecting barbed wire, and this was kind of associated with it. And I started collecting a few old tools, and I'd go someplace, talk to someone, and they'd say yes, and I'd say, well, can I beat you out of this? Sure, but I've got another one out here. I've got this. And one thing just grew and grew and grew, and the more I got, the more interesting it became. And I had a few beers here in the box, and those fellows would come by, and one fellow would bring something, and I'd put his name on it, and then he'd bring somebody in to show him what he had given me, and this fellow would give me something. It just kind of mushroomed from something like that. And then I really began collecting tools after I got a couple of 300 items. Then it really became interested, and I got books and began to learn something about them.
The tools Wiley has in his workshop and stored in crates around his house date back to before the turn of the century, but most of them are from the 1920s and the 1930s. And the business of collecting tools has changed a lot since he started.
Oh, it was much easier then. You could find things then. Today, they're all gone. I don't think that I have collected, I'll say I haven't collected 10 tools in the last year. And I don't think I've collected 2. I don't remember a one this year, within the last year. But I haven't tried maybe as hard. They're not that scarce, but to find a different tool to what I have when I know I have over 1,300 tools, different kinds, you don't just find another tool real easy.
There are not many new discoveries made anymore in Wiley's hobby, but he still prowls around on weekends as often as he can because there is a lot more to collecting than simply finding things.
The most fun in any collecting that I have done is meeting that one particular fellow that maybe he'll say that you've been out in the sun too long or your hat's too tight. You go out and ask him to go out on his farm and look for old barbed wire. Well, you go out and find a piece and he thinks you're crazy for wanting to go to this to build a fence to get this wire, and then you start to leave and you see an old wrench there and you say, Mr. Jones, I'm also an old wrench collector. And he said, yeah, you're a scavenger, aren't you, or something like this? And the first thing you know, you have made a real nice friend. You've gone in, drank his coffee, and probably eat his wife's cake or something like that. And these things happen very frequently. There's nice people that I've talked to.
Wiley True has built his tool collection around tools that were used in early years in the area around Weimar, and he has about as much fun identifying them as finding them. He has a library of books that he often refers to, and one of his best sources has been a reprint of an old Sears Roebuck catalog. Wiley particularly enjoys showing an old carpet stretcher and also a homemade hub reamer for a wagon wheel, and 2 old rakes, one bigger than the other, acquired from a farmer who told him that the small rake was his and the big rake belonged to his wife. Wiley True is likely to keep on searching for old tools, even though it's harder nowadays to find them, because Wiley enjoys meeting new friends. He still hasn't gotten one of those old J. Armstrong post hole diggers, but he knows 2 of them are still in town, and he hopes someday to convince the owners that the Armstrong post hole digger should be in the Wiley True tool collection.
Luther Fore has had a lot of jobs in his lifetime. He's 92 years old now, and he doesn't move around as fast as he used to, and he has a little trouble with his dates sometimes, but Luther's still keeping busy at Alazan near Nacogdoches.
I retired back in 45, and I've owned 5 different sawmills.
Luther Fore has been a lumberman and a cattle rancher and an oil field worker, but his real specialty is carpentry. Luther was born near Melrose in 1887. He came to this area in a covered wagon in 1903.
My daddy owned a blacksmith shop, and I worked in that. And, of course, doing work around the places where I'd help him build houses and things like that. And just go from one place to another. And I finally left here. I tell them all they run me out, but I was hunting green grass. And I went to Lufkin. I hope build the first high school that's built in Lufkin. And I hope build that roundhouse, Southern Pacific Roundhouse there in Lufkin, 1913. Back in the 60s, I got to making gun cases. Of course, I'd been making cabinets and things like that. And I just decided I'd build a gun case.
Luther eventually took a partner into the business. Paul Johnson is the partner. He's younger and a lot stronger than Luther. He and Luther together build Luther's popular custom gun cabinets and split the profits. Luther does mostly supervising now. He'd like to do the physical work, but his body's not up to it anymore. So Paul and a helper do most of the hard work. Luther supervises and helps out wherever he can. Luther Fore has earned the right to take it easy. He's been working hard almost all his life. Age and experience have made Luther Fore one of the finest cabinet men in East Texas. He and Paul are still turning out gun cabinets regularly, and Luther considers retirement out of the question. He's still alert, he still has a lot of experience to pass on, and besides, Luther has something else to prove. He intends to live longer than anybody else in the Fore family. And Luther has an older brother still living, so he must keep on keeping on.
What do you attribute your long life to?
Well, that's something I can't hardly say. I've tried to be truthful and honest to everybody. Treat the other fellow like I'd like to be treated, and not ask him to do something for me that I wouldn't be willing to turn around tomorrow and do the same thing for him or twice as much. I would not like the fellow that the fellow went down to interview and found out what he wanted to know. He is up in his 90s, and asked him what he figured would cause them living so long. He says, well, I don't smoke, I don't drink. And about that time, big calamity over in another room, the reporter jumped around. He says, what in the world was that? Oh, it says that my dad says he pulled another big drunk yesterday and he started to light a cigarette and burned his finger. So I wouldn't like him. I drink. And you smoke a little.
A family in Central Texas started a little retirement hobby in the early 70s, and now the whole family's busy operating the business that hobby became.
The Sherman Lessesnes never dreamed their hobby would grow this big. Dr. Lessesne was a professor of chemistry at Southwestern University in Georgetown for 20 years. He started there trying to develop candles that would burn in different colors. That led him into manufacturing candles, and he turned that hobby into a business in the early 1970s. The Lessesnes called their place Old Georgetown Candles at first, but now the name of the company is Mar-John Candles. They named it for their children, Marcia and John. The Lessesnes say it is a lot easier to decide to go into the candle business than it is to learn how to make candles.
It was mostly by trial and error. I had a laboratory that was available, and we first worked out our formulas, and then we worked out our colors, and then the perfumes, and then we started to work on our molds, and so mostly it was done by, as I said, trial and error. There are not really no very good books on candle making. If I hadn't had some training as a chemist and engineer and some laboratory facilities, I don't know if I could put it together or not.
Dr. Lessesne visited a lot of other candle factories, and he spent a lot of time in libraries reading about candles. And today he says he believes his company offers a bigger variety of candles than any factory in the world.
We make candles here in two ways. One, by hand dipping, the old process, and a second is by pouring the melted candle wax into molds and allowing the wax to cool and harden and then removing the molds. And after taking them out of the molds, they are finished and quite often painted, particularly the figurines. Also incorporated in the paraffin, we have to add dyes and quite often perfumes. And we now have over 300 different types of candles with about 20 different colors and about 20 different perfumes. We have people that come by from all over the United States and I guess essentially every country in Europe, and we keep a guest book and ask for comments. And one of the things they say is, oh, I never realized there was so much to candle making, and what a nice odor it has, and enjoy the colors. And we think it's a pretty place, and we'll tell our friends about it.
All the employees of the Mar-John Candle Factory live in the area, and many local families work right alongside the Lessesne family to create the extravagant line of candles. Christmas is the biggest season for candles, of course, but the Mar-John Company's reputation has reached the point that the plant stays busy now most of the year. There are only about half a dozen candle factories in Texas, and this is the only one located on a major highway. It is right on Interstate 35. It is the only one featured in Texas tourist publications, and it's the only one that welcomes the public to drop in anytime to see how candles are made. And anytime means anytime. The Lessesne's place is open 7 days a week. They use more than 120,000 pounds of candle wax a year now, and so the chances are pretty good that anytime you stop by the factory, you're apt to find them making candles.
The Mar-John Candle Factory is right on Interstate 35 in Georgetown, about 20 miles north of Austin. I'm Ray Miller, and I hope you'll be back with us at the same time next week to see some more of Texas.
Eyes of Texas travel guides for the Gulf Coast, East Texas, and the border area are now available from your bookstore or Cordovan Press, 5314 Bingo Road, Houston 77092.
The Eyes Voices of Texas.